In this video, we're going to show you how to install the fender on your Jeep Wrangler. Located on the passenger side, the process for the driver's side is very similar. Using a 13mm socket, remove the 2 bolts holding the strut rod right here. If you want, just put the bolts back in where you pulled them out from, remove the rod, set that aside. Use your screwdriver, your flathead screwdriver, to go ahead and loosen the air intake tube. Go ahead and pop that off. Open up the air box. I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this here and remove the unit here from the vehicle. On the base of the air box, there should be 3 8mm bolts. It's one here, and there was one here. Someone was already in here, damaged the air box, and they just put a self-tapping screw in. You want to go ahead, loosen, and remove these here. Go ahead and remove the air box and set it aside. Using a 13mm ratchet, gear wrench, anything you have, go ahead and loosen that. Pull that off. Do the same for the positive side here. Drop that off. You can use your ratchet or gear wrench for the J bolt here. You just got to get that J bolt out of the back side here. And the reason why they call it a J bolt is that it's shaped like a J, and these hooks drop down into a notch, and then the other end, or the end of the rod here, goes into a hole, and as you tighten it, it pulls it up and it secures that battery in place on both sides. Now that we have that out, set it aside. We can now go ahead, lift up that battery, remove it from the battery tray. With the battery removed, go ahead and work that fuse block up. Go ahead and tuck that down. We now want to go ahead and remove our battery tray. There are 4 bolts on here. They're 13mm, 1, 2, and there's 2 on the other side by the fender. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove those. Now that you have your bolts out, go ahead and lift up the tray. And we have our fuse box bracket right here. There are 3 10mm bolts, 2 here, 1 on the back. Go ahead and loosen and remove those. And if you look down the inside of the fender here, where the fender attaches to the body itself, there are 4 13mm bolts running down the back side here. I'm going to go ahead and get to the ones that you can from up top here, and then go underneath and remove the remainder of the bolts. Now from underneath the vehicle, if you follow the fender rail up, you're going to come across a bolt here, and you can gain any access to the other bolts up top. We've already got 3 of them out, and we're going to grab our 4th bolt from the bottom here. Using a 19mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove the lug nuts, and then remove the wheel. Now on the inside fender area here, there's normally 4 13mm bolts. What Well, ours only has one in this place. Let's go ahead, loosen and remove these. On the back side of your fender mounted light, you're going to find the socket outlet. Going to twist that counterclockwise, pull that out. It's going to give us access to the 3 bolts that would be here. Ours is missing 2. There's one up top here. Use a 13mm socket. Go ahead, loosen all 3 of them if you have them. On the back side of this fender light is another harness. You're just gonna grab that socket just like we did the front fender mounted light, twist that counterclockwise, pop that out. Now the harness itself is attached to the fender right here via a little plastic retainer. Sometimes you can grab that and just wiggle that out. Let that drop down. On the inside part of the fender where it bolts to the grill area, there are 3 more 13mm bolts. Ours is missing here, so we're just going to go ahead and remove these 2. Okay, remove the fender grommet here for your wire harness. Just peel that out of the fender. Now on the front side of the fender, right where that rubber grommet was, if you follow the harness up, there's a connector right here. You want to pinch this tab right here, separate that harness. You can lower it down and pull the lighting out from the hole in the fender, and you pull it up. There's your harness right there. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. Now the fender extension here has a bolt going through. It's a 10mm nut on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and loosen and remove that. Now at this point, you can grab the fender. You'll be able to work this up and out. Go ahead and separate it from the vehicle. Once you have your fender off, you want to go ahead and swap over all of your other reusable components onto the new fender, such as your fender flare, your marker light, and the inner splash guard. Go ahead and line up the fender. You want to make sure that the stud for your lower splash guard here lines up with the hole in the fender itself. So you're just going to work that fender into place. I want to make sure that we don't scratch up our paint here. Line this up and work the fender up and over the shock tower. Once you get that stud through the fender, we can go ahead and line up the front portion of the fender. Now that we have the fender lined up, we're going to go ahead and reach around and we're going to install the upper bolt that goes from the fender into the body. All right, once we have that bolt in place here, we're going to go ahead and use our socket and just run that bolt down, but we're not going to tighten it. Now that we have this bolt in, go ahead and install the other 3. That'll help secure the fender itself to the body. Now let's go ahead and install the 4 bolts on the inside of your fender. You just want to go ahead and get these started. Going to repeat that process for the other 3. Now on the inside of the fender here, I want to go ahead and line up the fender so that we can get the bolts in here, securing this to the grill area. So go ahead and just kind of move that fender around. And that's why we left the other bolts on the back side loose. Go ahead and install the 3 bolts on the back side here. You want to just get that started. I'm going to go Go ahead and run those down a little bit further. Get these put in about halfway. Once you have these in, let's go ahead and move to the front side. Install the bolts across the front here. Once we have this top one done here, go ahead and do the two lower ones here and here. Now access the lower bolt for the fender to the body right through the bottom here. Now we have all of our bolts installed. We want to go ahead, just do an overall inspection, look at the fender, make sure that the fender itself lines up with the body properly, make sure the fender lines up with the grille properly, and then we can go ahead and tighten down all of our bolts. Once that's tight, do the two below. Now we're going to install our splash shield here. It's easier to get the fender installed without this installed. Just going to get this lined up, and you'll have the plastic push pins here that just press into the holes in the fender. So just line those up. Push them in, and just repeat this process until the whole unit is installed. Now we have the 10mm nut that we removed from our splash shield here that went through the fender. We want to go ahead and install the nut on the other side of that stud there, put that on. I'm going to go in and we'll tighten that down. Let's go ahead and install our lighting harness here. Feed the connector up through the hole and then press the grommet into the hole in the fender. You're going to run the harness up, push that through. We want to go ahead and get our lights installed here. So we're going to take our forward mounted marker light, put the bulb into this here. I'm going to line this up, and then we're going to turn it clockwise to get that to lock into place. Once that's locked in, go ahead and do the outside marker light. Again, do the same thing. Just press it into the back side. Twist that clockwise, lock it into place. There's a little anchoring tab right here that goes into a hole up in the top portion of the fender. Go ahead and reinstall that. And this harness here we can just tuck off to the side for now. Go ahead and install your wheel. Once that's in place, go ahead and install your lug nuts. Go ahead and get your lug nuts installed. I'm just going to get these all started first, and then we'll come back and snug them down. Install your light harness. Line that up. Push it together. You can feel it in here, it snap into place. Go ahead and install your battery tray. We'll go ahead and line this up. Go ahead and get your bolts started in. Once you have all your bolts in, go ahead and tighten those down. Install the fuse block bracket here to the fender. And go ahead and tighten them down. Let's snug those down. Once you have that bracket on, we can then go ahead and grab our fuse block, bring that up. I'm going to slide the 2 tabs on. Just going to get this lined up here. Tap that down into place. You want to go ahead and pull your battery cables off to the side. Let's go ahead and get our battery installed next. Let's now install a J-hooks to secure our battery. You just want to make sure that the bracket itself is secure. You don't want to over tighten this here and crush the battery. So once you see that the J-hooks are anchored, just tighten them both down evenly as best possible until you can't wiggle this anymore and the battery is solid and in place. Go ahead and install your air box. Get your hardware installed. Once you get the hardware installed, go ahead and snug it down. Go ahead and get the other bolts in. Drop in the air filter. Make sure that drops down into the tray and it's not protruding out, otherwise you won't fit the upper portion of the air box in place. Grab the upper portion of the box, line that up and press it on, and then install your clips all the way around the perimeter. Grab the air intake tube, pop that on, grab your screwdriver, and we'll tighten that clamp down. Pop the terminals on here and tighten them down. Snug it down. I'm going to go ahead and just give those a little wiggle, make sure that the terminals are snug and not loose. Now, if you put your bolts back in like we did, you want to go ahead and remove those, otherwise go ahead and gather them. Go ahead and get those bolts started. And tighten them down. Torque your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.